Hey guys.
Oh.
Hey there. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Artenders with Mac and Dan. I'm Dan, he's Mac.
Yes, I am.
Today we did something special.
Very special.
We saw something together for the first time in like a year and a half.
Oh yeah, we witnessed it.
In terms of like us going to immediately review it.
Yeah.
We decided to go to a movie theater and see the next thing that's showing.
So we walked up at, what was it, 2 p.m.?
Yeah, like 2 p.m.
And the next thing that was on, like that was really all we were able to do was just go up and see what the next thing was on. And the next thing was Ticket to Paradise.
Correct.
Starring George Clooney and Julia Roberts.
That is correct. Also starring Caitlin Dever, who carries a lot of this film, I will also say.
Absolutely. And she was the one from Booksmart, correct?
Yes. Yeah. She starred in that film in 2019 as well.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So the reason that you're seeing me ask what movie she's from is because we haven't done any research because, Danny...
Because this is fresh.
We didn't know.
So, I mean, all that we have at our disposal at the present moment is just a viewing of this film and very preliminary research or just very light stuff, right? I just found out that the director and also one of the writers for this film, Al Parker, I'm not entirely sure, but Mr. Parker, directed and written the sequel to Mamma Mia. Bet you didn't know that. But
Bet not.
Let's go into this. I don't really know how to start this, but what I'm going to say is that after having seen commercials for this film, it is both surprising and I guess in my sort of degree, not surprising at all how much I enjoyed this film.
I have to say, Danny, I think that our experience, and I say experience intentionally, was only a fantastic one because of our surroundings, because of the way in which we viewed it, right?
So let's, we saw it in movie theaters.
But
the big thing is that we saw this together,
yes,
which I think enhanced the experience
100%.
Also,
instant stakes.
And there weren't a lot of people in this movie theater, but I gotta tell you, pretty geriatric.
Pretty geriatric, I'd say.
Yeah.
Pretty snow-capped, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
As well as
there was a bunch of older and middle-aged white women.
That's correct.
Long story short.
That's correct. And then us.
Yeah.
And
we had a great time with them.
I think that our presence was not only welcomed but encouraged. The second that you let out your first iconic Danny laugh, and it rang throughout the theater, I think everyone just took a collective sigh of, this is going to be fun.
Right. Hold on. So let's just ask that question outright. Yeah. First of all, do you think this was a good movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
It's an enjoyable film.
It's
good. It's
sure.
good.
Yeah.
And I think
clean movie.
just sort of off the cuff reactions to it. I think the chemistry between George Clooney and Julia Roberts was fantastic.
They're old friends. You can tell.
Yeah. And it worked really well. And they were just actively playing off each other, which I'm always a sucker for.
Absolutely.
And I thought Caitlin Dever was solid as well. And even though I enjoyed the film and I enjoyed the comedy and enjoyed some of the dramatic tension throughout the film as well, yeah, it's good. But the thing is, and it's going to be an issue for this podcast, Mac, that, and I said this earlier, I am actively forgetting about this movie the more time goes on.
But I think
we finished this movie not even about an hour ago.
I think that is a very important part of the review, though, right? Yeah. Is that it is a fairly forgettable movie. And I think the thing that's important to remember is that I don't think anyone involved in this movie thought they were reinventing the wheel.
No.
This is a very
safe
studio movie. This is the rom-com they churn out to make the money, and I'm sure they made some because it was probably fairly cheap to make, other than the location. I can only imagine that no one thought that it was going to be all that good.
But it was one of those things, and of course, this movie at the very end during the credits had a little blooper reel. We love that.
Of course.
It's so stupid,
but
I love it every time.
I'm shocked that it wasn't framed by postcards. Do you know what I mean?
Oh my god, yeah, you're so right.
Like that's like the credit thing, right?
You're so right.
Especially in
super campy.
like kids movies, kids rom-coms.
Yeah.
Anyways, but Yeah, and it's interesting for me because I haven't seen a big studio rom-com that's been made in a while. Like, usually I go back in time to see those. I don't see, like, the new ones that are coming out.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting to watch this and go, oh, they've gotten even better at the algorithm. Like, their formula is, like, really tight now. They got a thing going on. They know what they're doing.
And like, also... I forgot what I was going to say. I completely dismantled my thought, and I'm now
that's okay, but
reveling
that's,
in pain.
I think that's what is to be said about the movie, is that it's forgettable, but like you know that you're not getting a whole lot. Right. It was more than we expected, but what we expected was nothing.
Correct.
Right.
And so it was nice to actually walk away from this movie and like, oh, I felt something.
Yeah.
I laughed at a few moments.
Yeah, right?
And I gotta say also, like, I actually did enjoy the character progression of the relationship with George Clooney and Julia Roberts. The sort of the plot, what's happening here in this film is that George Clooney and Julia Roberts, their characters were divorced like 19 years prior to the events of the film.
Yep.
Their daughter, having just graduated from college, goes and vacations for like a month in Indonesia. She meets a guy there, and then the next month they get engaged and are planning to get married. Mm-hmm. And so that's like the inciting incident, essentially. And so George Clooney and Julia Roberts' characters, even though they hate each other, they kind of unite together in order to like stop the wedding. And turns out they want their daughter happy, and so they try to, instead it turns into them supporting the wedding and them sort of falling in love once again. It's the most like by the numbers shit. But it worked.
It did. It got us. It got the both of us. Yep. And it got everyone in that theater. I think that...
Were there people next to us crying? You said that there were people crying.
Yes.
And I'm not going to lie. I got a little pitter-patter.
Really?
No tears.
When? Oh, was it like the stare?
So, I mean, you know the story of the movie. Like,
honestly, we can talk to the people as if they've seen the movie, because it's like every other movie, but they did it well. You know,
I'm a sucker for parent offspring stuff. I always am, right?
Parent Trap
and so,
others.
And so when Caitlin Deaver's character, after she had officially gotten married, went up to her dad, they were having a short conversation, and she said, "Do you want to go dance, Dad?" I'm like, that got me. That got me a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. You know what got me?
This movie had good emotional moments. I was expecting to be cynical throughout the entirety of this film.
Yeah.
The fact that I wasn't, I think is a success.
I think it's because there's this interesting evolution in rom-coms where because they are going to be the same every time.
Right.
There's kind of a power in knowing that it's going to be the same every time. You know what I mean? So like whenever they it was a very self-aware movie in that whenever they came across moments, they knew that it was cliche.
Yeah.
And they were respectful of the cliche while also like making fun of it at the same time.
Right.
Pretty consistently. And so every time that we would run across a moment that would usually make you cringe, you were like, oh, but
it's meant to.
Exactly.
So there's this is a great example of that.
Please.
There's at one point of the movie where everybody's getting really, really drunk, and primarily the two stars, right?
Yes.
And they get so drunk, and then Billy Lord's character, who is Caitlin Deaver's best friend, I'm not even going to refer to their names. Billy Lord was like, "Hey, can you put on something, old for these two old people?" And they played Everybody Dance Now.
Of course they did.
Sick of that song. Absolutely sick of that song.
I mean,
But it's funny how that moment kind of worked, because it was supposed to be sort of like based in cringe.
Yeah.
Based in sort of embarrassment.
Yeah.
Like it actually kind of worked for that.
Okay, well, I think this is it, right?
It wasn't trying to be cool, and that was the point.
It is... The ideal in these types of movies, the ideal is that it is cringy because, like, it makes you cringe in the same way that your parents do whenever they, like, embarrass themselves, right? But the way that you do that, and the only way you can do that, is if you get people to play the parents that feel like our parents.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think it's very smart, and it really worked that they got two people that feel like, they're in the group of like the parents of America, because like I grew up with George Clooney, I grew up with Julia Roberts, we all did.
Wow, congrats!
They're real nice. They're great cooks.
They were never home. They were always out and about doing their work.
Italian Job. That's George Clooney, right?
The Italian Job?
Yeah.
Wasn't like I thought Mark Wahlberg was in that.
I think everybody's in Italian Job. Oceans. I'm thinking of Oceans.
You're thinking
Oceans.
of and Julia Roberts also.
Was in that?
Yeah. And you know what's the best part?
Of course.
Hold on, you know what's the best part also? They were also playing a divorced couple in that film.
Really?
I'm dead serious. I know.
Wait.
Yeah.
So do you think this is a universe?
Oh my god.
You think this is the Oceans universe? Where Caitlin Dever is like the offspring of the Oceans divorce couple?
I mean, I don't think so, but yes.
Oh, that's very funny. That's very funny. I mean, it's possible. But, however, I think that there's definitely like this elite club of celebrities that we feel weirdly attached to emotionally.
Yeah.
For instance, you remember whenever like one of the first people to get COVID was Tom Hanks?
Right.
And everyone blew the hell up because it was like, that's America's dad.
Yeah.
He didn't do anything to really earn that necessarily.
If it happened to America's dad, it can happen to anybody.
Really, that was
the
whole
thought
thing.
that transpired.
And I started thinking through, whenever everyone said that, I started thinking through, and I can't really think of many dad roles that Tom Hanks has played, to be honest. But we still feel like he is that because he's like
some sort of paternal
goofy,
figure.
fun, lovable, and when we watched him grow into an old man.
Right.
And he's about the same, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that getting that brand of celebrity was a smart move because whenever they were doing cringy things, I was never like, oh my God, they're doing this part of the movie. That's uncomfortable. I was like, it's very funny and weird watching George Clooney do that because it's George fucking Clooney.
Yeah, there's that sort of element that if you take the step back and you're like, wow, no, this moment is like funnier than it ought to be.
Right.
Because of that.
Because honestly, maybe just because it was George Clooney. I don't even know anything else. But also the other funny one for me is that like I was raised watching like young Julia Roberts movies and was always like, oh my God, she's like the picture of grace and elegance and beauty, and like, oh my God, Julia Roberts is so hot, right? And so it's funny because as I'm watching this movie, like that hasn't left. Like I'm still watching the movie and being like, oh my God, Julia Roberts is so attractive, and also like she's the mom.
Well, yeah, well,
it's funny that it's both,
but it's also a testament to their acting ability, how they were just able to like get themselves into those roles so seamlessly.
Right.
You know, like it was, I don't even mean this, if this comes across as a disparagement in any sort of capacity, I deeply apologize, but like it was like the roles fit them really well. And I think honestly, a big reason why those roles fit so well was because it was with each other. Right?
Uh-huh.
I don't know how well this movie would have been if it wasn't George Clooney, if it was like Brad Pitt or even Tom Hanks.
Right.
Like it'd be different films, but
it's
like, it just works for those two actors.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if like part of the green light of this movie was knowing that both of those two specific people were signed on. You know what I mean?
I think I want to say yes. I mean, I know very extremely little.
I also would, again, reckless speculation. Speculation.
Now that we have laid the base work, the groundwork, reckless speculation. Go ahead.
This isn't like a big serious one.
Oh, okay. It's not that reckless, then.
I would go as far as
speculation.
To say, you're right. Responsible speculation. That I'm sure that whenever Julia got the call, she was like, I'll do it if George does it. And whenever George got the call, I'll do it if Julia does it. You know what I mean?
Maybe. Honestly, maybe.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, like, that's how I would feel, at least.
Here's the thing,
after all this time.
Because not only did the chemistry between those two work, but, like, the first half of the movie, all they're doing is just throwing insults at each other.
Yeah.
So, first of all, right, like, it was working for them, too, because you could tell that the actors genuinely enjoy each other's company still. Yeah. And so maybe even not all of it was like scripted. Probably a good amount of it was like off the cuff, sort of improvisational banter.
It looked like that from the credits.
Yeah, and so there were some.
Because remember,
bloopers.
we got bloopers in the credits.
We got bloopers in the credits, and some of those insults thrown at each other were sort of improvised.
You know what? I would go as far as to say that I think that there is a difference between bloopers and outtakes. And I think in this instance, it was bloopers.
Go on.
I feel like bloopers are, correct me if I'm wrong, sillier.
Yeah.
Than outtakes. I think the outtakes are
genuine mistakes that end up being funny.
Yeah. And I think the outtakes could also potentially be like takes that would have been. but bloopers are like actors being silly.
Yeah, like with
And
the
this
purpose
was-
of being silly.
And this was actors being silly.
Yeah, there was a couple like something like fell and that like freaked everyone out.
And this
in
is
a blooper,
this is a strong opinion that I have that I've just adopted and I'm going to make strong
Very
for the
nice.
sake of entertainment. I think that bloopers belong in credits, outtakes do not, and there is a difference. And I'm upset at anyone that puts outtakes in credits. That's what I'm gonna say.
I'm glad that you have taken this stance.
Why not?
You're a soldier.
It's a safe stance to take.
We are. I'm not gonna lie. Like we're trying to like talk about stuff in this film.
Yeah. It's one of those.
Here's what I'm
We're
gonna
not
say.
like making high art here.
No, especially with Ticket to Paradise, and they weren't. Listen,
Ticket to Paradise.
Listen,
And the song was not played. Let me repeat.
Eddie
the
Money
song
deserved
was
better.
not played. Everybody Dance Now was played.
it's true.
Making sure that we remember that at the same time that we remember Ticket to Paradise was not played.
And we don't know how litigious the Eddie Money estate is.
You think they tried? Where would it have gone, that movie?
Where
Oh,
would it have
when the
gone?
old people music came on?
Or like at the very end, it would have been the credits. It would have been perfect.
You're right.
2 Tickets to Paradise.
It
and it's
should have
like,
been the credits.
The movie ends with George Clooney and Julia Roberts all of a sudden deciding together. And it was a very cute moment because
I was about to say, can we
they
talk
were-
about that moment?
Okay, yeah. Because they were very alive with each other. Because what it was is that they were just sitting on a boat that was going off together, right? Sitting next to each other. And they're just like smiling and looking at each other. And hardly any dialogue is being said. And eventually they're just responding to each other just with their bodies. And then they held hands. And it was just, you can tell, like, it was the most Tony Leung thing that they were acting with was just like their eyes.
Tony
And it was,
Leung.
but it was great.
Yeah, and it was clear. It was very
It
clear.
was very clear.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful sort of
was a beautiful
exploration of storytelling of just letting those two actors work.
I think that was whenever we gripped each other.
That was
one of the
one of them.
moments. Yeah. That and definitely whenever. Okay, so Caitlin Deaver and her fiance in the movie.
Maxime, I'm gonna probably not say this name correctly, but Maxime Boutier, who
Nice.
plays the fiance G'day.
So they were about to get married.
Yeah.
And at one point, G'day stops the ceremony,
Right, because what he has to do is like drive a knife through some sort of like
kind of leatherish looking
material,
mat.
right?
Yeah.
And he just stops it right before it stabs through, and I viscerally grabbed Mac, and I was
Yeah.
like, "No."
Yeah.
I was like, "What's going?" Oh, because
And-
it was the first time in this movie that I was shocked.
May I say, you made a noise that made some of the ladies that were sitting on our row laugh a little bit.
Yeah.
I saw them look over and kind of like giggle a little bit because you grabbed me, and I'm going to do a gross impersonation, but this is the sound that you made. It went something like, oh. But it was just loud enough for the other people in the theater to hear it, and they started laughing a little bit because there was a silence in the film.
But
right?
here's the thing: is that
That's a testament.
this movie super duper formulaic.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But it was
Yeah,
like the
it
one
knows what it
time.
is.
It was literally the one time in this film that where I wasn't expecting something like that.
Right.
I was expecting the knife just to go through them to finish the ceremony,
See-
yada yada yada.
Danny, I've watched enough.
Mind you, it's in the third act where something surprising happens, but whatever. I'll give the movie credit for that.
It's at the very end.
Yeah.
I've watched enough Hallmark movies with my mother to know that
Julia Roberts.
we were a few speeches away from a happy ending. We needed a few more speeches.
Go on. What do you mean by we needed a few more speeches? Just to be
Oh.
straight up a Hallmark film?
Yeah, like the formula insists that there are speeches about love and acceptance at the end.
Right.
And specifically, funny enough, because like the logical, and this was something that I kind of laughed at, right? The logical person to speak in that moment, whenever he's like, I need your blessing and everything. The person that is more attached, the person that just had an intimate conversation with the daughter, the person that more represents the family to the rest of the family that they just met, the Indonesian family, is Julia Roberts. She probably should have been the one to speak, but like the Hallmark thing, the formula insists that the bigger celebrity is the one that has the speech. So George Clooney stands up and starts a speech. Now that might be a hot take that, or a sizzle serve. So sorry.
That's okay.
Caught it. Sizzle serve that that George Clooney is the more famous person out of him and Julia Roberts, but it was funny because it didn't feel like he should have been the one to stand up and say something, but he was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm with you right there. there. I did also find that moment a little bit strange that it wasn't Julia Roberts.
Yeah,
saying
I was like,
the sort of you have our approval, which also, let's just say, like, not a good speech.
Not a good speech.
That the character had, that George Clooney character had. It was
very weak.
It was
you could have gone way harder.
Weak. It was the emotional climax of the film, of the parents finally accepting that all of a sudden their daughter, who was going to become a lawyer in like Chicago, was instead wanting to get married to a seaweed farmer in Bali.
Right. Well, I think another thing that goes mentioning is the downfall of making a movie that is so painfully aware of its cliches, right?
Yeah.
Is that because, like, all the times that we ran across a cliche, they were just kind of coy about it, and they were like nudge, nudge, wink, wink to the audience and moved on so that it wasn't cringeworthy. They didn't acknowledge the fact that after all those moments, they had actually earned the cliche moment. With George Clooney standing up and speaking, that a lot of him speaking was just like straight to the point, like all that stuff.
Right.
But he could have gone into like, I would have been okay with him saying cornier things.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, look, it doesn't. It was just not a good speech. I'm not so much like, I'm not going to really propose whether or not it should have been corny, more corny, or less corny.
Sentimental,
or
I
whatever.
suppose.
But yeah, more sentimental, or just like if. Here's what it is also, is that like the speech was so unsubstantial that it would have been better if it was just like one sentence, you know?
Yes,
like
if they had like mastered a sentence.
If it was even more to the point, but because it was like a speech that had so much fluff, like the rest of the movie, and also sometimes like this podcast as well, that like I wish it was just more direct. It was just like we came here, and truth be told, and he looks around, we were trying to sabotage this marriage. And then Julia Roberts would chime like a Trojan horse, and then he'd be like, absolutely.
And that would have been funny.
That would have been funny. That would have led with a funny moment.
And you're improvising a really solid speech here.
And then we realized...
Actually, Danny, could you give us a dramatic reading of the speech?
A dramatic reading of the speech?
You're George Clooney. The speech, it begins.
When I came here with a woman who I was divorced to 19 years ago, but I tell you, I wasn't expecting this to happen. Truth be told, and I look around at everyone.
Yeah.
I was trying to sabotage this marriage.
Trojan horse.
Thank
Trojan
you.
horsing.
And we thought, it was a great idea. But after having met G'day, his family, being here, and seeing our daughter genuinely from the bottom of her heart, happy, the happiest we have ever seen her, that truth be told, we couldn't be more proud or more supportive of everything that she has going forward.
And tears.
Of course, you have our blessing. Woo! And then everybody starts clapping.
Everyone freaks the freak out.
Why was that a better speech?
And then here's what happens. And then George walks up there, and throughout the speech, he's been approaching them.
Yeah.
He's been walking up to him. He looks the boy in the eyes.
Yeah.
And he whispers to him. He says, "Couldn't be more proud of you two."
Oh!
And then
that's good.
He takes his hand with the knife.
Yeah.
And together.
No.
They drive the knife. No.
I knew you were going there.
I knew
you were going there a little bit too far.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Like
fully disrespectful to tradition. Absolutely.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
But here's the thing also, is that when watching this film, you could also tell that they were having a good time. And it's good for occasionally it's most important to have art that says something. This isn't art it's saying something, but it's not going out of its way to really say something.
Yeah.
It's saying, we got to do what's best for us. Why wait for happiness to happen?
Yeah.
It wasn't really exactly that. But why wait for the good things to happen? I think is like a recurring sort of motif.
Well, also, I kind of enjoyed the fact that whenever... This is one part that I found interesting. Whenever G'day looked at... Which... Never mind. Whenever G'day looks at George Clooney and Julia Roberts and is like, but we don't have your blessing, it was kind of funny to me that George Clooney's first response wasn't even really like, oh, of course you're my blessing. It was more like, fuck my blessing. You don't need my blessing. Who cares?
Yeah, or just like, I don't know. He leaked a lot of confidence that moment.
Yeah, right. And I
or
was
it was
like,
just like sort of like shrugging off, like, you don't need my blessing. And I guess like that moment kind of works, but it's like,
give them blessing.
I like, after seeing that shot, if I were the director, I'd be like, actually, that moment didn't work. Can we try it like this, George?
Absolutely. 100%. I completely agree.
And Shama has now entered the studio.
Unavoidably entered.
And like,
there's no way around it.
Listen, she was trying to not disrupt in any sort of way, and she wasn't. But
and the best part is, probably could have gotten away with it.
Yeah.
Probably could have gotten away with it, but now we're here.
Well, because I derailed it, as I do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You missed his improv.
Yeah, I improvised an entire George Clooney speech that could have been better, and it was ridiculous. But point is that you could tell that this movie was really well enjoyed doing by everyone involved.
Sure.
Like, and I think that's important to get every once in a while as a sort of like artistic maker, right? Like, one of my favorite experiences, and I know this is ridiculous, but my first professional show that I did like a few years ago before COVID. Like, that show wasn't good. I don't say it. But
sorry.
Yes. But
sorry.
yes.
Sorry. I said at the moment that you said that. Sorry. Go ahead.
But like, the show wasn't good by any stretch of the imagination, but I had a great time doing it. And I think it's important to have that every once in a while. And of course, like, this movie was sort of pleasing to the denominator of middle-aged older white women. And that's okay. But, like, the more important thing to me is just, like, it seemed like everyone had a really great time doing it.
True.
And I was surprised by, like, the genuinely pretty solid acting performances by almost everyone, for the most part.
Like
I really like Clooney's. I really like Roberts. I really like Caitlin Dever's. I really like Maxine Bautier's. I hope that I'm pronouncing that right. G'day's performance. I did not like Billie Lourd's performance, but that's okay. I blame her character for that.
Correct, as well as I think that no matter how bad she was, it was still kind of funny.
Yeah. And you know what? I gotta say also.
Yep.
Biggest pet peeve. I know I'm all over the place because I'm actively trying to remember things as well.
That's good.
But one of my least favorite things is when there's a scene with the only characters in the room are characters who their first language is not English, and they speak English in the scene. And there was a scene like that in the film. However, as in there was a scene like that where the only characters in the room were people whose first language was not English. And you know what I appreciate? They never spoke English in that scene.
True.
Thank God. It was when G'day was just about to get married, and it was him and his parents.
Yeah.
And they were the only people in the room, and they only spoke, I don't know the language, but they were only speaking that language and not English. And I'm like, thank God, because, like, it just feels so out of place when a movie does that, and it allowed me to buy in a lot more into the world and into the story and into the characters, that this is something that they're going through and not a director or producer trying to, like, elbow in. Actually, we should get some more English here. And because there's plenty of English in this film.
Yeah. No, and they're not missing that by any means. So I think it was excellent.
What?
It was a good experience.
Oh, yeah, it was a great experience, but, like,
simple as that.
It's not excellent.
No. Sorry. Our experience at the cinema was excellent.
Right.
The movie was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Unbelievable.